The wind rushes through the crack of a forgotten window and makes the curtains tremble. In that tremor, an ancient word reappears, as if it had been written before I was even born. The question arises, not as an explanation, but as a wound. What does this word want with me? It is in this moment that the promise of this encounter reveals itself. There is an entire universe within you, vast and silent, and it speaks not in logical sentences, but in symbols. This video, The Universe Within, Deciphering the Symbols of Your Mind, is not an empty spiritual metaphor. It is an invitation to learn to decipher the secret language that your unconscious is already whispering every day. You may believe you know yourself, that reasoning and clarity are enough to guide you. But what if I told you that most of your inner life doesn't happen in the light of consciousness, but in the shadows where images recur? The counterintuitive thing is this: what you don't understand is precisely what most insists on transforming you. Carl Jung called this territory the collective unconscious, a library of symbols shared by all humanity. Søren Kierkegaard would remind us that looking within requires courage, because deciphering the signs means assuming choices that cannot be delegated to anyone. Imagine now that every dream, every bodily symptom, every repetition of daily life is not coincidence, but grammar. The universe within you speaks in images that seem banal: a cup that doesn't fall, a forgotten word that returns, a face that appears uninvited, but they are windows open to what you most fear and most desire. Clarice Lispector, if she were here, would say that it is in the banal that miracles happen, that epiphany is born from an ordinary gesture when we dare to look closely. The promise of this video is simple and radical. I won't offer shortcuts or ready-made phrases, but a map for you to learn to hear the latch of your inner doors. If you stay with me until the end, you'll discover poetic and precise practices that will transform the way you see your dreams, your patterns, and even the silence of your body. Not to solve your life, but to expand it, because the universe within you is as vast as the universe outside, and to ignore its symbols is to condemn yourself to self-exile. Welcome, a glimpse of the real where silence speaks, and the soul finds itself. Perhaps you felt this silently, waking up with a strange sensation, a persistent image, but dismissing it as nonsense because adult logic has no time for absurdity. Perhaps you've tried to explain your sadness to someone and felt irritated because no words seem true to what you truly feel. Or perhaps you've laughed at yourself for remembering a ridiculous dream while simultaneously harboring the strange impression that the dream concealed something you needed to understand. The truth is that most of us live in exile from ourselves. We translate our bodies into diagnoses, our dreams into jokes, our daily rituals into distractions. We pretend to be merely rational consciousness, when in reality we are traversed by a sea of symbols that don't ask permission to exist. And silent pain arises from this disconnect, from trying to fit into rational words when the heart insists on speaking an older language. Clarice Lispector said that sometimes life escapes us through the edges of simple things, and it is in this space of escape that the soul cries out the loudest. Here's the paradox: you can ignore these signs and continue living as if nothing happened. But at some point, the same pattern returns, the same symptom returns, the same anguish resurfaces. It's as if life has decided you can't move forward until you learn to decipher your own internal grammar. Carl Jung reminded us that what is not brought to consciousness returns as fate. And Kierkegaard would add that to ignore this call is to waste the only life you have. And here's what few realize: there's an image in your mind that repeats itself, perhaps in dreams, perhaps in an automatic gesture, perhaps in an object that always catches your eye. This image isn't random. It's the first key to deciphering the universe within you. Later in this video, I'll show you how to recognize this symbol and transform it into a map of yourself. But before we get there, we need to understand the pain behind the silence, because only those who validate the pain can decipher the language of the soul. And I want to hear from you. How many times have you found yourself dismissing something that seemed important to you just because you couldn't explain it in words? Write in the comments. 1. Happens almost always. 2. Sometimes. 3. Almost never. Your answer may reveal more than you think. Think of someone you might know, or perhaps you yourself have at some point in your life. They believe everything can be resolved through reasoning. They make endless to-do lists, plan every detail, and try to control every variable. When they feel sad, they rush to rationalize the emotion. They seek quick explanations, statistics, diagnoses. When they dream, they laugh at themselves and say, "It was just my disorganized brain, nothing major." When your body hurts, you run to the doctor, wait for a prescription, go home and carry on as if nothing had happened. This character is a portrait of what Jung would call a one-sided identification with rational consciousness. He believes he is in control, but in reality, he is being controlled by what he cannot see. Because while he tries to decipher life with logic alone, the unconscious creates images, symptoms, and patterns that return, always return. Kierkegaard would call this disguised despair, living trying to maintain a facade of clarity while the heart groans within. The contrast is stark but necessary. What appears to be strength is, in fact, fragility. The obsession with quick explanations reveals a fear of feeling. Contempt for symbols reveals a fear of losing control. The exile of one's own internal images disguises itself as productivity. But ignoring the signs doesn't eliminate them. It only transforms them into ghosts that silently haunt. Now, the truth that almost no one tells. Understanding symbols doesn't mean abandoning reason, but allowing it to walk alongside intuition and imagination. What seems illogical can be the key to their deepest coherence. Clarice Lispector wrote, as if touching a wound with her fingertips, not to heal it, but to acknowledge its existence. And it is in this recognition that life takes on new meaning. I want to propose a micro-challenge to you now. Close your eyes for just 30 seconds and try to recall the first image that popped into your mind today when you woke up. It could be an object, a color, a scene. Don't try to interpret it. Just record it. Now open your eyes and write that image down on a piece of paper. This is the first gesture of reconciliation, telling your unconscious, "I saw you." If this has made sense so far, subscribe to the channel now, because the next part will show you a path that almost no one dares to teach. How to transform symbols into living maps of your own existence. If we want to learn to decipher the inner universe, we need to begin with 3 simple yet radical foundations. These are not abstract theories. They are starting points for anyone who wants to approach symbolic language itself. The first foundation: pain is also language. What you don't understand about yourself, anxiety, repetitions, disconnected dreams, is not a flaw but a message. Clarice Lispector reminds us, on every page, that wounds are also revelations. Suffering doesn't arise to punish us, but to demand listening. When you begin to validate your own pain, something changes. It ceases to be just a burden and becomes grammar. The second foundation: symbols are not fragile metaphors. They are real events of the soul. For Jung, dream images and recurring patterns are not illusions of the mind, but manifestations of the unconscious. A snake in a dream is not just a silly dream. It is the way your psyche has chosen to dramatize a conflict or a desire. It is the theater of the soul performing for you, night after night. The third foundation: repetition is an invitation, not a punishment. How many times have you noticed yourself getting caught up in similar stories with different people in different places? This isn't bad luck, it's syntax. It's the way your life insists on repeating the same word until you finally learn to listen to it. Kierkegaard spoke about the anguish of repetition, but also about its transformative potential. Repetition can be despair or redemption, depending on how you look at it. Now, I want to propose a quick challenge, which may seem naive, but it's a radical exercise in mindfulness. For 1 minute, look around the place where you are right now and choose an object that usually goes unnoticed. It could be a pen, a button, a plant. Hold it in your hands and ask, silently, why do you insist on existing by my side? Don't expect a rational answer. Just notice the sensation, the small shift in meaning that occurs when you look at the banal as if it were a revelation. This gesture is key to training your symbolic listening. Clarice transformed a forgotten cup on the table into a portal. Jung called the patterns that emerge from these images archetypes. Kierkegaard reminded us of the seriousness of living as a choice. They all converge in the same direction. Life is not just what happens, but what symbolically reveals itself in each event. And here I leave a provocation, a riddle that will only be solved later in this video. Why do some internal images liberate us while others imprison us? Why do certain symbols seem to open doors for us while others condemn us to always repeat the same closed room? In the next few minutes, we'll return to this mystery. But first, I want to ask you, how many times have you noticed that an object, a dream, or even a physical pain kept coming back, as if begging for your attention? What did you do with it? Did you ignore it, rationalize it, or listen? I want you to take a deep breath with me for a moment. Close your eyes, if you can. Imagine a river flowing before you. It doesn't rush. It doesn't struggle to move forward. It just keeps going. Alan Watts said that living is like dancing or playing music. It's not about rushing to get to the end, but about being in the rhythm, in time with each note. The river doesn't ask where it's going. It simply flows, and yet it reaches the sea. So too is the symbolic language of your unconscious. It doesn't reveal itself when you try to force explanations, but when you allow the flow, when you look at an image without demanding an immediate meaning from it, when you respect the mystery before trying to decipher it. If you're still here, listening to these words, I want you to know you're no longer part of the majority who consume quick answers and reject silence. You're part of a smaller, almost secret group that chooses to look inward seriously. This takes courage. It takes patience. And above all, it takes commitment. But here's something few realize, and which I'll reveal later. Not every symbol is neutral. Some carry the power of life, opening new paths. Others, however, become invisible prisons that shape our patterns of suffering. The challenge is not just recognizing symbols, but discerning which of them demand embracement and which demand rupture. This distinction, this secret about the dual power of symbols, will be explored in the next part. For now, I want you to take with you the image of the river, flowing, patient, unhurried, yet transforming everything in its path. So far, we've seen that symbols aren't flimsy metaphors, but the very grammar of the soul. Now, we need to take a step further, perhaps the most difficult. Most people believe that interpreting symbols means finding a single correct meaning, as if there were a universal dictionary capable of translating every dream into a ready-made formula. But this is an illusion. The truth is more radical. The symbol does not come to be explained, but to be lived. Carl Jung said that symbols are bridges between the conscious and the unconscious. They don't just want to be deciphered. They want to transform us. When you dream about fire, it doesn't just matter what the fire means. What matters is what that fire does to you. It burns, illuminates, devours, warms. The symbol isn't asking for translation. It's asking for participation. Clarice Lispector understood this intuitively. Her texts don't explain. They expose, wound, reveal. Reading Clarice is to enter a space where each word is more than just a word. It is living matter disturbing, and liberating. Kierkegaard also knew understanding is not accumulating ideas, but allowing oneself to be permeated by them to the point of choosing one's own life anew. I want to tell you a little story. A man dreamed repeatedly of closed doors. Each night, a different door, always locked. He tried to interpret it. Doors are opportunities, so I'm missing out. But the dream persisted. One day, tired of searching for meaning, he decided, in his dream, to simply approach the door and put his ear to it. Then he heard voices. They weren't lost opportunities. They were parts of himself asking to be freed. The symbol didn't want an explanation. It wanted to be heard. Here's the twist. As long as you treat symbols as puzzles to solve, they will continue to elude you. But when you begin to experience them, to dialogue with them, something opens up. The unconscious ceases to be a stranger and begins to be a companion. And now a mystery that I leave hanging. And we will only close in block 5. Whether symbols can transform us, who chooses which symbols remain alive in us? Will you be the one to choose? Or is there a greater force, cultural, ancestral, collective, that decides for you? Before we go any further, answer in the comments. Do you usually write down your dreams, symbols, and patterns? Or do you let them get lost in oblivion? The time has come to reveal something we've long since left unanswered. Not every symbol is liberating. Some open paths for us. Others chain us to painful repetitions. Carl Jung called this possession by the archetype. When a symbol is embraced, it expands life. A fire that warms, a serpent that renews, a door that opens. But when the symbol is rejected or misinterpreted, it becomes a prison. The fire that burns everything, the serpent that paralyzes, the door that never opens. The same symbol can be a bridge or a cell. Clarice Lispector sensed this danger. In her narratives, a banal image, a chicken, a cockroach, a glass of milk, is never neutral. It can reveal an epiphany or intensify the abyss. It all depends on how we allow ourselves to be crossed. Kierkegaard would say that this is the existential choice. Either we assume responsibility for the image, or we become its victims. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine someone who repeatedly dreams of murky waters. This symbol can be liberating if seen as an invitation to purification, to diving into the unknown, to accepting one's own vulnerability. But it can also imprison if the person fixates only on the fear of dirt, darkness, and what they can't control. The same river you cleanse can drown you. Here's the key. It's not enough to recognize symbols. You have to learn to dialogue with them, asking, do you show me prison or freedom? Do you ask for acceptance or rupture? The answer does not come in ready-made words, but in subtle changes. A sensation, a displacement, an act that becomes inevitable. And here I leave one more enigma, which we will only close in the next block. If symbols have this power to shape destinies, how can we actively choose which images to nurture and which to let die within us? Before we move on to the final part of the journey, I want to hear from you. Write in the comments. Is there a recurring symbol, dream, or image that always accompanies you? Do you feel that it opens or closes paths? Share. This exchange may reveal much more than you imagine. And if this video is already making you think about yourself in a new way, leave a like now. This simple gesture shows YouTube that this content deserves to reach more people who, like you, are seeking to understand the universe within themselves. Now, it's time to close the circle. From the beginning, we saw that symbols are not decorations, but the secret grammar of the universe within you. We began the journey by showing the pain of exile from oneself, repetition as an invitation, the symbol as a living event. Then we revealed the danger and the power. Each image can be a bridge or a prison, but the question I left hanging remains. Who chooses which symbols stay alive in you? The answer is this. Deep down, It's you who decides. You don't decide which symbols emerge. They emerge from the collective unconscious, from experiences, from culture, from ancestry. But you do decide what to do with them. To nourish a symbol is to give it space, attention, and presence. To neglect it is to let it wither. Symbolic life is not blind destiny. It is dialogue. Carl Jung said that we do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but rather by making darkness conscious. Kierkegaard reminded us that true choice is always a matter of existing before oneself without excuses. Clarice Lispector showed us that even the most banal object can transform into an epiphany if viewed with the courage of one who allows oneself to be pierced. So here's the final reveal. The universe within you is infinite, but it only takes shape to the extent that you accept being your own interpreter. Symbols don't come to give you ready-made answers, but to invite you to explore larger questions. To ignore them is to live in exile from yourself. To listen to them is to allow yourself to inhabit the vastness of your own soul. And now I ask you, what will be the next symbol you choose to listen to? Will it be a dream, a repeated gesture, an object forgotten on the table? Perhaps this very video, which didn't come to you by chance. This was the universe within, deciphering the symbols of your mind. If this journey touched something within you, leave a comment telling us what image or symbol resonates with you right now. Subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who also needs to come to terms with the mystery within themselves. Because in the end, the universe isn't just out there in distant stars. The real universe pulses here, within you,